Before this video starts, if you enjoy this video, there are many more like it already on the channel, with many more like it to come in the future, so subscribe. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I would really appreciate it. I upload 6 days a week on this channel, so if you're looking for some consistent basketball talk, this is the place for it. Also, drop a like on this video, it only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. I'm going to say something right now that I not only never expected to say in my YouTube career, but never expected to say just in life in general. And no, I'm not being held hostage. No, there isn't someone behind the camera with a gun pointed at me forcing me to say this. I enjoy watching the Houston Rockets play basketball. Again, I'm not being forced to say this. I can't believe it either. I genuinely have been loving watching Rockets games for the last week or so as the NBA has come back. The 3 games that I've watched of them so far have all been really good games and I've had a good time watching them. Maybe it's the fact that I haven't watched live basketball in a very long time, but I don't even think that's it, because 2 of these 3 games have been my 2 favorite games of the bubble thus far, and what I think it really comes down to is the small ball. After the Rockets made their Clint Capella trade, I only watched 1 of their games after that move because, as is well documented on this channel, I do not particularly enjoy the Rockets' style of play. James Harden in many ways represents some of the worst things about basketball to me. Russell Westbrook is very frustrating to me because of how talented he is, but with how many dumb decisions he makes, like what's the point? And though I endorse modern basketball, there are some elements of modern basketball when taken to their extreme that really annoy me, and it's fair to say the Rockets take modern basketball to the extreme. However, I have turned a new leaf in terms of enjoyment of watching the Rockets, but more importantly, I've turned a new leaf in terms of how good I think this team can be. I was so confident that the Rockets would not do shit in this year's playoffs that I even went as far as to say that, I would cut off my balls if they won the championship. Don't know why I had to word it like that, but that's what I said. So after saying no way will they win shit to the point where I was willing to sacrifice my nuts, now here I am making a video on why I believe they're the dark horse of the 2020 playoffs. And I really fucking hope I'm wrong, because I'm a man of my word, but fuck it, let's do this. I very recently did a video on small ball versus tall ball where I talked about Houston's small ball, the positives and negatives of it, and why it really works. However, I didn't really talk about how that would affect their playoffs this year, or talk about the individual matchups that they would have and how small ball would affect them. So I want to do that, but first mention a few things about small ball that I did not mention in that video. First of all, though I did mention this roughly in that video, what I did not really explain to the depth that I should have is how much Russell Westbrook being better in this system impacts the Rockets as a whole. I mentioned how much better Russ is in small ball, but I did not mention how that has affected the Rockets as a whole. See, the reason I felt so confident saying the Rockets could not win a championship to the point where I was willing to sacrifice my ability to have children if they did, was because to me, based on my preconceived notions of the Rockets and Russell Westbrook, there was no way in hell that would work. And before the Capella trade, I was pretty correct. It wasn't working, and it seemed like Houston was fucked. Like, here's a massive contract player in his 30s who just does not work in your system. I guess you're just stuck with this. But Daryl Morey said, fuck it, we're in a position here where we can stick to our guns currently and it's really not going to work, or we can make a drastic move that either will work or it won't, and then we'll live with the results. And luckily thus far, going small seems to be the pick, and it seems to be working out. My thing was, if CP3 and Harden, who worked great together, wasn't good enough to win a championship, why the fuck would that be the case with Russ, who, unlike CP3, was a poor decision maker who couldn't shoot? Like, why would that work? But with the spacing that Houston has provided with their small ball lineup, the ceiling for Russell Westbrook is much higher than that of Chris Paul when he was on the Rockets. Basically, Russ with spacing is better than Chris Paul in 2018. But really the main reason why I believe this move makes the Rockets so much better of a team is because this team really no longer relies on James Harden or Russell Westbrook having huge scoring games. Now, of course, they do rely on Russ and Harden. Every team relies on their star players, but the problem with the Rockets over the past few years has been if Harden was playing poorly, the Rockets were just straight up playing poorly and there was no in between. Against the Bucks, the current best team in the league in terms of record, Harden had 24 points on 35% shooting from the field and 25% shooting from 3, and the Rockets still won. That's the difference for Houston. Russ is just so much better in Houston's system, and the team itself does not really rely on James Harden scoring to nearly the degree that they used to because that system is in place. Though I do feel weird calling it a system because it really isn't, more of a concept. Because if you watch the Rockets, they seem to pretty much never call plays. It's basically like Russ and Harden get by their man and wait for the help to come. Either they get to the basket or generate an open three-point shot, and that's not an easy thing to guard, so why make it more complicated than that? Like, the list of defenders that can stay in front of both of those guys is shorter than my editor. I'm sorry for this, Rudy. He's going to see this joke in the cut, and I'm sure he's going to put some snarky text over it, but keep it nice, Rudy, or I will fire you once more. So because of that, the Rockets are going to generate a lot of open three-pointers, which as we know is pretty damn important in 2020. But weirdly, even with that, this team doesn't rely on threes to nearly the degree that they used to. Even though they are shooting more, with Russell Westbrook, the team scores quite a bit more in the paint. Chris Paul is one of the greatest point guards of all time, but no one ever accused him of being a slasher. That's obviously not the case for Russell Westbrook. And when going against even the best defense in the league, the Rockets are getting pretty much a great look on every possession. Either they get a layup, dunk, or free throw, or they get a three-pointer, and that's pretty damn fantastic. Like, I don't know that I have ever seen an offense that generates this many open looks on a consistent basis. So that's everything there is to say about the Rockets that I did not say in my small ball versus tall ball video. Now let's talk about their individual matchups in the playoffs. As of right now, the Rockets are tied for the 4th seed with the Utah Jazz. However, they are just one game above the 7th seed because the West is just incredibly stacked. So they could drop down. All I will say that's 100% necessary is they need to avoid that 7th seed. And ideally the 6th seed as well, but I think you can live without that one. If they get the 7th seed, that means they match up with the Clippers in the first round, which is obviously not ideal for them. It would be preferable not to run into the Nuggets, who are the 3rd seed, but it's also not a death sentence. I still believe the Rockets would win that series, even though they do have a mismatch in Jokic on PJ. I just think they have more star power. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the Rockets stay where they are currently, and in the first round they are matched up against the Utah Jazz. Now, here's the thing. Yes, French Roy Hibbert is probably going to average 20 and 20 against this team, but it's really not going to matter. There are just going to be too many times where he is just so fucked on defense that it will make up for it, because Gobert is not going to be sticking to PJ Tucker in the corner. In fact, I would not be shocked if PJ averaged 10 three-point attempts per game in this series, because he's just going to be that wide open, and you know PJ's a knockdown corner three-point shooter. Against the Bucks, who give up the most three-pointers in the league, he shot 12 of them. But even if Gobert is averaging 20 and 20, I just simply do not believe it's going to matter because the Rockets are just a better team. But what will matter is they're going to match up against the Lakers in the second round if the seedings stay the same, and that's no bueno. That kind of fucks with my whole dark horse thing because I don't believe that this team is going to beat the Lakers if they match up. To me, this would easily be the toughest matchup for the Rockets to have. Ideally, the seeding goes so crazy that the Clippers and Lakers manage to meet in the second round and the Clippers win, which is possible, but if that does not happen, I don't think the Rockets will be winning a championship. However, they wouldn't be a dark horse if I just thought they would win. I just think they have a better chance than they're given credit for. But I also don't think a matchup versus the Lakers would just be some cakewalk for LA. That would not be the case. I'll use the same point that I did in my video on why I believe the Clippers would be the 2020 champions, which is basically this. If I'm matching up against the Lakers and I have to choose one of their 2 stars to have a good matchup on, it's going to be LeBron James, not Anthony Davis. Robert Covington is a good matchup on LeBron James. But of course, Anthony Davis is going to eat in this series. However, what I do want to mention is that there is a trade-off there. I'm going to have to once again reference Legend of Winning's video on this trade because it was just fantastic and really changed my perspective on the entire situation with that. And he said this about a potential matchup against a team with a really dominant big man like Anthony Davis.
Which means that he's generating roughly around 16.5 points strictly off of post-up shots. So how can the Rockets match that productivity? 2 words: corner threes. When it comes to corner threes, on average, the Houston Rockets attempt roughly around 11 per game, shoot 38% from the corner, which means that they're making roughly 4 corner three-pointers a game, and that translates to roughly 12 points on a night-to-night basis just from the corner three. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, Anthony Davis still generated more points. However, be very mindful when it comes to Houston, these numbers predate the arrival of Robert Covington, who also shoots 38% from corner threes and has attempted quite a few of them within his first 4 games for the Rockets. And with the addition of Robert Covington, it's very realistic for the Houston Rockets to attempt 3 or 4 more corner threes, which means that the Houston Rockets can indeed match the productivity from these dominant big men just off of corner threes alone.
So yes, the Rockets will give up more points in the post than they do typically because of this size disadvantage. However, it is a trade-off. Now, I do not believe the Rockets are going to beat the Lakers, but I also would not be shocked if it was a 6 to 7 game series, and I even wouldn't be all that shocked if they manage to win the series. Again, ideally, the Clippers meet the Lakers in the second round and win, and then Houston's title hopes go up exponentially because I'm confident they could give the Clippers a series in the conference finals and even win. The Clippers don't have some dominant post scorer. Yeah, Montrezl Harrell's good, but it's not like he's going to average 20 and 10 in this hypothetical series. And once more, the Rockets have a good matchup against the best player in the series in Kawhi Leonard. And honestly, if this managed to be the conference finals matchup, I'd put a bet on the Rockets just because I know the return would be worth it. Like, I think the Clippers win, but I also think it would be a lot closer than people would think, and those odds would yield a steep return because of that. And in a hypothetical matchup against the Bucks in the finals, assuming they make it that far, yes, the paint would pretty much be on lock for them. However, the Bucks give up more open three-pointers than any team in the league, and if the Rockets manage to get hot for a good sequence of games, then anything is possible. So that is why I believe the Rockets are the dark horse contenders of the 2020 playoffs. I honestly don't know who I am after making this video because this completely contradicts so many things I've said in the past, and I honestly don't know how I'm enjoying Rockets games. I guess I've just gone insane, but whatever, video's over.